Thank you very much, Paul. Merci à tout le monde d'être ici ce matin. C'est une conférence de presse très importante au sujet de la décision d'éliminer le table ronde sur l'environnement et l'économie. This is a non-partisan press conference. I want to stress that the hat I'm wearing here this morning at this table is as a former vice chair of the National Roundtable on Environment and Economy. I was a member from 1994 until 2001, so it's been more than a decade since I've served, but we've assembled before you a representative sampling of the more than 20 members who have today sent a letter to Prime Minister Harper to urge reconsideration to protect the Roundtable. We have with us, in addition to myself, 5 current and former members. I want to identify first that in the audience is Professor David Bell, Professor Emeritus from York University, who also served on the National Roundtable, who has an academic perspective on the Roundtable's work. And then I'll introduce in the order in which they will be speaking, and then not intervene, and I'll just ask my colleagues to speak up as soon as your colleague is finished to take over. We're going to start presentations with an old friend, Bob Mills, who started in Parliament with the Reform Party, then Canadian Alliance Conservative Party, former chair of the Parliamentary Environment Committee and current member of the Roundtable. He'll be followed by the Honourable Mark Parent, a former cabinet member in the Nova Scotia government, Minister of Environment under Premier Rodney MacDonald, if I'm correct, in the Progressive Conservative government. After Mark will come Angus Ross, served with me on the Roundtable, representing a corporate perspective. Angus Ross was a very active member of the insurance and reinsurance industry and played a primary role, may I say, in successful work on brownfields within the Roundtable. And lastly, but certainly not least, Dr. Jim MacNeill, who has served within many departments in the Government of Canada and an Officer of the Order of Canada, and the Secretary General for the World Commission on Environment Development, primary and lead author of the Brundtland Report, and one of the first members of the National Roundtable. So turning it over to you, Bob.
Well, thank you very much, and it's certainly my pleasure to be here and to indicate why I believe the Roundtable should be preserved and how important it is to this country. First of all, Canada needs a brand name. Internationally, it helps bring investment. It helps all of those things that help Canadian business to be international. The National Roundtable, as a nonpartisan group made up of all focus of all parts of Canada and of all different businesses and academics and interested citizens, was a brand name for us. It gave us something that I don't think could be replaced by any other organization. If we look at Germany, the UK, the US, and most recently China, it's very interesting that they have groups like this who are presenting to representing the public of their country about environment and sustainability. I think that the vision that's necessary for a government to have in the area of environment and the economy, those are hooked together so closely, and that's what's important. I always thought that conserve was part of the conservative mantra, but I might be wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't think bureaucrats, I don't think academics, I don't think private, I don't think NGOs can provide what the Roundtable did. I've been proud to be part of it. I think the reports have been excellent, whether it was on the Arctic, whether it was on water, whether it was the ministerial request to find out how the provinces are going to achieve a low-carbon economy, and most recently, a report that's coming out soon on how Canada can achieve a low-carbon economy, I think is just critical for the government to take a look at. So it's my pleasure to be here to answer any questions and to say why I believe the Roundtable must be maintained in whatever form, and I think it's a big mistake to take that out in this current bill.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to be here as well, not primarily in my capacity as a member of the Roundtable, although I am one currently, but in my capacity as a former Minister of Environment for the province of Nova Scotia. And Nova Scotia, as many other provinces across Canada, look to the National Roundtable on the environment and the economy for leadership. Indeed, when we set up our own roundtable in Nova Scotia, the model that we took was the National Roundtable on the Environment and the Economy, and it's still growing strong, and I'm thankful for that. But more importantly, not just for the model of roundtables, but for the emphasis on sustainability. And I mean really not so much environmental sustainability. The environment will take care of itself in many ways. It will survive us no matter what we do to it. But economically, economic sustainability. Unless you have natural capital in the environment, you will not have economic sustainability. The two are inextricably intertwined. And this emphasis upon the two being together, and the emphasis upon the economy and preserving the economy not just in the short term but in the long term, was what attracted us in Nova Scotia and many other provinces to the Roundtable as a model. Its reports were helpful to us, and it was a leading light to us. And when we moved in Nova Scotia to bring in a rather innovative bill, the Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act, very much the Roundtable was a factor in that. So I lament the loss of it. It can't be replaced easily by other institutions, and it will be missed, and I hope the government will change its mind. It can easily be done, I understand, and Elizabeth can explain this further through an amendment to a clause, just to drop certain clauses as the bill winds its labyrinthine way through the House of Commons. Personally, to echo what Bob said, as a progressive conservative, I'm pretty sure conserve is in the name conservative, and I always thought that conservatives sought to conserve the best of the past in terms of the wisdom and insights, but also, and maybe foundationally, to conserve the environment, this wonderful world on which we all depend, and which we want to be there not just for ourselves, but for our children, and as a new grandfather, for our grandchildren and beyond as well. So hopefully the government will listen, and your support getting the message out is very much appreciated.
I'm Angus Ross, and I'm very pleased indeed to be able to speak a few words to you today about why I believe it is vital that the government retains the National Roundtable on the environment and the economy. I was fortunate enough to spend 8 years on the National Roundtable from 1995 to 2003, and during those 8 years the Roundtable worked on a number of issues that are of vital importance both then and continue to be to Canadians in every single province and from every walk of life. We worked on sustainable cities under the leadership of Mike Harcourt. We worked on woodlot management and the intergenerational transfer of woodlots in New Brunswick. We worked on water and wastewater issues, and those are still very much in the forefront of Canadians' concerns today. We looked at ecological fiscal reform. How do you green the budget? How do you bring forward measures in the budget that will support ecological reforms to benefit the environment, while at the same time bringing economic sustainability into the business community? We looked at northern development, and with the increased focus that we're now seeing on potentially Arctic development and the mining and other interests in the Yukon and Northwest Territories, this continues to be of major interest. And the one which Elizabeth mentioned earlier that I was very pleased to chair the task force was the National Brownfield Remediation Strategy for Canada. And that has been used as the Bible by at least 4 provinces in developing their own brownfield remediation strategies. It has generated hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for the federal government, against which the cost of $5 million a year pales into insignificance. For these reasons, and for the work that the National Roundtable continues to do in so many important issues in an unbiased, independent fashion, I firmly believe that the government is making a serious error when it plans to eliminate the National Roundtable.
Well, thank you, Angus. I agree with what has been said, and I won't repeat it, but Since I am the only one here who was, so to speak, there at the conception, perhaps I could start with just a tidbit of history. Elizabeth mentioned the Brundtland Commission and our report, Our Common Future. I have a copy of it here. In it, we recommended that nations establish multi-stakeholder groups to advise governments on the integration of the environment and the economy. We saw that integration as absolutely fundamental to any transition to more sustainable forms of development. Now, Canada's Brian Mulroney was one of the prime ministers. There were many others who took this seriously. He established the Round Table. He appointed David Johnston, our current Governor General, as the first chairman. I, as one of the founding members, we had CEOs from industry, and we had political leaders, not just the Minister of Environment, but far more importantly, we had the Minister of Finance. As a matter of fact, Michael Wilson attended our meetings regularly and religiously, I would say, and I remember that we spent a lot of time talking about the role of his budget, which is, after all, the principal policy link between the environment and the economy. He didn't believe it at first, but in time, he and some of his officials realized that the budget, more than any other statement of government policy, determines whether development will move in directions that are sustainable or unsustainable. Now, you can't do much work on environment and economics without getting into foreign policy. And whenever the need arose, we met with and discussed our work with then Minister of External Affairs, Barbara McDougall. And of course, we reported directly to the Prime Minister himself, and from time to time we would meet with him. He realized that it is only the Prime Minister that can direct the policy changes needed to effect a shift to more sustainable forms of development. Now contrast that with today. When Canadians think about Prime Minister Harper's destruction of the Round Table, they should ask themselves why. Now, what has changed? Take the issues for which the Round Table was established. They have gotten worse, not better. Back then, we had crossed only one principal planetary boundary. Indeed, we hadn't really crossed it, but we were warning we were getting awfully close. Today, we have crossed 4 of them. And the most important, of course, is the carbon threshold, and now with rising temperatures and sea levels. Some of you will know the International Energy Agency. I worked with it for years when I was a director at OECD. It is not known for its green colors, but in its recent report on world energy projections, it warned that we are currently on track for a 6 degrees centigrade increase in global temperatures by 2050. Now that's 6 degrees in the next 38 years. It's extremely serious. Yeah. U.S. Energy Secretary and Nobel Prize winner Stephen Chu has warned that we are looking at a scenario in which there is massive drought in the Western Plains and no agriculture in California. Yet our Prime Minister has shut down the Round Table. And I must say, for reasons that are not entirely clear, but his Minister of Environment says that they didn't like what the Round Table was doing on climate change. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's because of their belief, which they repeat ad nauseum, their belief that environmental protection is necessarily an enemy and a lethal enemy of economic growth and a killer of jobs. Now, for those of us who were there, we know that that is a very old-fashioned belief. We fought that in the 50s, in the 60s rather, and 70s. And in '84, after 6 years of work, it was thoroughly debunked by the OECD at a big international conference in Paris on, guess what, the environment and the economy. Still, it seems that in Mr. Harper's world of post-truth politics, where facts are what you want them to be rather than what the scientists say they are, none of this seems to matter. And when scientists keep producing, in Canada, scientists keep producing and our institutions keep publishing reports that the government doesn't like, the response of the government today is to silence the scientists and close down the institutions. Where, we might ask, is Brian Mulroney when we need him? Thank you.